Hurling in the shadow of the Rockies.
In the merry month of June, from my home I started, left the girl to tune, sad and broken hearted, saluted me father dear, I kissed me darling.
The podcast engaging community through intimate stories of the individual, fostering their culture through hurling in the West. Thank you for listening and welcome to the second episode.
Frightened all the dogs, rattled all the bogs, on the rocky road to Dublin, 1 to 3 for 5.
So that's what I want to get. See, with the amount of Irish people as well, that's what we want to get the hurling culture so they can celebrate being Irish and also celebrate the competition between two different towns. Or, if we can get 5 or 6 different teams, even in Montana alone, and have tournaments over weekends. Imagine if we had a hurling tournament the weekend of St. Patrick's weekend over in Butte.
Oh my gosh.
Should it be mayhem?
Yeah.
Would it be good?
Brilliant.
It'd be mayhem, yeah. People would be rising from the dead to come back and watch it.
In fact, it was a great St. Patrick's Day weekend in Montana this year, with the tricolor raising over the Capitol and the governor's proclamation on Friday in Helena, the parade on Saturday in Missoula, followed by a game at Washington Grizzly Stadium between the U of M Grizz and the Thomas Francis Meagher Hurling Club of Missoula. Then on the High Holy Day itself on St. Patrick's Day, the parade in Butte, America, and the first ever hurling match between Butte's new team, the Wolf Tones, and the Grizz.
All the way to Dublin, Wakefield all day, yeah.
This season, we're telling the story of the founding of the U of M Grizzly hurling team. This interview goes back to the beginning. In this episode, we set the Wayback Machine to April 2014, when I sat down with Naoise Waldron. Naoise was a Fulbright scholar who came over from Ireland in 2013 to teach Irish language at the University of Montana in the Irish Studies program. While he was here, he founded the Grizzlies hurling team and helped plant the seed for hurling to grow here in Montana and in the West. In this 2014 interview, I talked with Naoise on the University of Montana campus about his experiences here in Montana to that point, what it means to be Irish, and how hurling fits into Irish culture.
My name is Naoise Waldron. I was born in Ballymena, County Antrim on the 25th of August 1989.
Everybody has a history. Can you tell me about your history and tell me about your family and where they came from?
Well, my mother's side of the family came from a place called the Loop in County Derry. So it'd be it's in South Derry, close to the border of Tyrone. It'd be a very Republican area. And we'd be classed as a Republican family, I suppose. So that's where they all came from. And my father came from Freshford in Kilkenny, where I was raised as well. So we've always lived in Freshford in Kilkenny, which is in the southeast of Ireland. And his father came from Kilkenny and his mother came from Kilkenny as well. So that whole side of the family is all Kilkenny. And then my mother's side is Derry.
And how did they get together then?
They actually met in St. Pat's College, Drumcondra, in the primary teaching course. So they were both training as primary school teachers and they met. That's where they met.
Is that what they do?
That's what they do, yeah. My father's actually going to retire this year. So we might get him out here to help coaching the hurling team and teaching a bit of Irish at Traillock maybe. He's kind of interested in that too now, since I told him.
And is that what inspired you to come over and teach?
I was my parents are both teachers. My grandfather on my father's side was a teacher and actually ended up being the president of the INTO, which is the Irish National Teachers Organisation. And so that was a pretty big deal. And he actually founded the hurling club in Freshford, and then my father founded the Camogie Club, which is the females version of hurling. So, and then I came here and founded this hurling club. So it's I'm following a trend, I suppose, a teacher founding clubs and stuff. So, and then I've always only spoken Irish to my father. I've never spoken English to my father. So we were raised bilingually at home. So it's just in my blood really, just to kind of follow on. My older brother is actually a secondary school teacher at home as well. So, and a few of my aunties are teachers, and it's just basically the whole family is nearly all teachers.
Now, do they teach Irish language, or is it just they teach primary school in general?
My older brother teaches the Irish language and history in secondary school, and then all the rest of them were all primary school teachers. So they taught everything from art, science, maths, religion, anything, whatever's on the curriculum, they had to teach.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Are there any stories that you think of when you think about being Irish that remind you of being Irish, that stick out?
Apart from hurling and actually speaking the language, there wouldn't be many now, but to be some that people would tell you here, especially about Irish people that they knew, and you just say, yeah, or even when you're talking to people here as well, straight away you just kind of go, you must have something Irish in you, just by the way they carry on and by the way they can take a joke and by the way they can give a joke and things like that. That's probably the main one. The sense of humour is probably the main one. Once people tell you a story, or if somebody doesn't get your joke, you just know that they're not from an Irish background, and so then you have to break it down and explain it, and then it's not as funny.
Yeah.
But that'd be the main thing, I suppose. The sense of humour really is the best part, and the music and just the culture in general, but the sense of humour really stands out for especially Montana Irish people as well.
Yeah, and the language is important to you. I mean, you've been over here now on a Fulbright teaching the language.
Yeah, the language is very important. I mean, because like that old proverb says, "Tír tanga, tír anam." So, like, I mean, a country without a language is a country without a soul, which I believe is true. Because I mean, if we all spoke English, it'd just be pretty boring. Yeah. I mean, what separates us from English people if we don't speak Irish?
Yeah, Padraig Pearse had it right.
Yeah, dead right.
Yeah,
dead right.
Yeah, and now, where your family was from and everything, that was a point of pride then.
Oh, big time, yeah. Especially for my mother's side of the family in Derry. I mean, because of obviously they still are under British rule and all that. But I mean, what separated them was basically Gaelic games, so Gaelic football, hurling, and then the language itself and music. So I mean, them four things would be the most important thing which separates Irish people from any other race, is the sports heritage, the language heritage, and then the music tradition and singing and all that. That's what separates Irish people, I feel anyway. They're the most important parts of our culture that need to be kept alive, and the language is up there with the most important one, I would say.
So tell me about being Irish. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a massive sense of pride, really, to be honest, because we're such a small country, but we've had such an influence on the world for such a small area. I mean, you could fit about probably 4 Irelands into Montana, but still, I mean, we're just such a diverse, just race of people that, basically it's kind of hard to describe. Hard to describe Irish person. Just that even though we're so small, I mean, we're so proud of being Irish, and we've had such a massive influence on American history, Australian history, building different countries, helping to build different countries. We've had a massive influence on politics and things all over different countries, establishing trade unions, fighting in wars, like things like that. Like, I mean, like, you just have to think of the 69th Fighting Division in the American Civil War. I mean, they were massive, and Thomas Francis Meagher and people like that. I mean, they've had huge influence on history of loads of different countries, especially America. And then, so then whenever you can come across and people find out you're Irish and they think you're great, and even though you think you're pretty normal, but then all of a sudden you kind of feel, maybe I am special, even though you're just from this little tiny dot in the middle of the ocean. And because even though we're a part of Europe as well, I wouldn't class myself ever as European. I'd always say I'm Irish. Like, the continental Europeans are an awful lot different than Irish people, so we're just a pretty special race, I suppose.
You get no arguments.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Thomas Meagher. You mentioned that. You talked a little bit about coming here, but when you were getting ready to come to Montana, what were your expectations? What did you think when you got your Fulbright scholarship and they said we're shipping you off to Montana? What did you think?
I remember I just read the email. I was outside my house because I locked myself outside the door, so I just went onto my emails on my phone because I could pick up the Wi-Fi from the house. And next thing I saw the email, it says, "Congratulations, you've been selected." I said, "Yes," it was happy days. And I looked in because on the application I actually selected that I'd prefer to go to the northeast part because I knew that there'd be hurling and stuff there. And then I said I was going to Montana, and straight away I kind of said, "Where's Montana?" So I looked it up anyway. I rang my father and he goes, "Oh, you're going to Butte?" I said, No, I'm going to a place called Missoula. He says, "Oh," he didn't know where it was either. So I started looking up the history and stuff, and I just got excited straight away. I just knew, I was just like, this is a kind of a hard-nosed kind of cowboy tough culture, but then also it's artistic and has both sides of the scale, which is pretty good. It's kind of like Ireland. That's the other thing. We always say, it's the 33rd county in Ireland, Missoula. That's what we'd class it as. So I was pretty excited. I couldn't really wait, and I started looking up and reading all the history about the place, and then all the cowboy heritage, the Native American heritage, the bull riders, the bullfight, and then the Irish heritage and the Irish history. I mean, it has everything. And then, like I said, like the artistic stuff and stuff, all the galleries and stuff downtown, and even here on campus as well. I mean, it's just class. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I remember I met Katrina at the Fulbright dinner, who was here last year, and straight away she just said, she goes, "You have no idea," and the rest of them have no idea. She goes, "You are going to the best place. People going to Notre Dame, people going to NYU think they have it well, but they don't have it half as good as you." And I said, "Oh yeah, cool." And she was kind of talking to me, and she goes, "Oh, and one more thing. You have to meet this guy called Chad Ireland." and I kind of said, "What?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "His name is Chad Ireland?" She goes, "Yeah." I'm telling you, she just goes, "He's a special type of character." And I says, "Okay." And then when I met Chad, and I just kind of said, "All right, this is what she meant." And then I met a fella called Caleb Barrett, who was on the hurling team, and became very good friends with him. And I mean, he's a professional bullfighter who was learning Irish, but is also a nurse. And I mean, like, you can't get more complex than that. And I don't know, he was asked to go to the NFL Combine to try out one time as well. He's just so athletic. He's just a freak of nature, basically. Who's part Native American as well. He's part Native American, part Irish, and then just full-blooded Montana, basically. He's just, same as Chad, really. They're just kind of special types of characters that you can only get in around Missoula.
And so when you told your dad, he straight away thought about Butte.
Butte, yeah. That was his fun, yeah. Butte, America.
Yeah.
That's what he thought of.
And so did he know about him? He knew about Butte.
Oh, he did, yeah. He knew a lot about it, but he didn't know about Missoula, obviously, but he knew all the history about Butte and Evil Knievel and all that stuff he was talking to me about, and then the miners and all that kind of stuff he was on to me about. And I was like, oh, wow. And then he actually gave me that book, Ruhamore and Teal, the book of Mickey McGowan, who came from Donegal and who worked in the mines for years and lived around Missoula, lived around Butte, and lived all over Montana. And it's a pretty famous book in the Irish language, so I was reading that on the plane over. And it's pretty good, it's pretty interesting. And then kind of when you come over and he's describing the characters that he came across, it's just like, well, they're still the same here, like, everyone's still the same. So it's pretty good, like, it's pretty cool.
Excellent. Have you got over to Butte and spent a little time?
I was actually in Butte. We went to a rodeo in Billings with Caleb last weekend, and I was in Butte for a couple of hours, but I've never been there for longer than a couple of hours. But we're teaching there this weekend, so I'll be there for a couple of days, so that'll be pretty cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, you'll have to.
Yeah.
See, so and you kind of got into this, but now that you've been here, because you've been here since when did you get here last August?
I arrived in Missoula August 20th, yeah, 5 days before my birthday.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So, what are your impressions of the Montana Irish?
The Montana Irish, straight away I always think of the that old thing that they used to say about the Normans when the Normans came to Ireland, and they became, what they said was Nís Gaelín on a Gaelí Tain, which means more Irish than the actual Irish. Because I mean, you're going around here and people are like Chad, for example, can speak almost fluently in Irish, and you go home and people that have been through the whole school system and they couldn't speak a word to you. And even Caleb tries to keep up, and all other people, like even like yourself, I mean, like throwing in words when you can, but at home, I mean, nobody does that. So, and then all the interest in hurling now, especially the interest in music, the interest in the language, just anything to do with being Irish, and they're just obsessed with it. And that they always class themselves as Irish. They'd never say I'm from Montana or I'm from Missoula. Well, they would sometimes, but you know, just always straight away, oh, I'm Irish. Oh, okay, right. Where are you from? Blah blah blah. And just talking away to them about it. But I mean, it's pretty humbling, to be honest. That's the easiest way to put it. It's humbling how interested they are in the language, the music, the sport, the culture, anything. Once we kind of brought hurling to their attention, just straight away, I mean, the friends of Irish studies jumped all over. I was like, this is exactly what you need. You need that kind of a backing in the sport. And I mean, so many people coming out and just have a massive interest in it. And it's just pretty humbling, like I said. It's a huge eye-opener, like when you come here and actually speak to the people who have Irish culture and who have Irish heritage, and they're just all over. Like Trailock says, I mean, to be Irish isn't actually it's not like a nationality thing, it's a cultural thing. Because there's so many different mixes in Ireland that basically to be Irish, you don't have to be from Ireland. If you're speaking the language, if you're playing the sports, if you're playing the music, if you're spreading the culture, that's it, your class as being Irish. It doesn't matter if your name is Anderson or O'Brien. as long as you're able to get involved with Irish culture, you're Irish.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you just alluded to it a little bit, the hurling.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me a little bit about that history of hurling, because it goes back thousands and thousands of years.
It goes back about 3,000 years plus now at this stage. It was basically used as a pastime for the Red Branch Knights and the Fianna, or the Fenians as well, the Fianna we call them just, who were just brigades of warriors, and what they used to do when they weren't in battle was they'd play hurling, which is basically as close to a battle as you could get without killing somebody. But maybe sometimes you might get killed, I suppose. But I mean, it was used as training. They used it for training for battle, and Cuchulainn famously was probably the most famous hurler of, as somebody said, probably put it, he was probably the first All-Star. And his story was basically he was playing in a hurling match with the local kids that were in the training section, and they were all invited to go to a meal in Cullen's home. So Cullen famously had this big, fierce, ferocious guard dog who was a big, giant hound and real vicious. So they were all invited, and Satanta, as he was known as then, was invited to the meal as well. But he was so caught up in the hurling match, he didn't realise that everyone had left. The older people had left, so he was still playing with the kids his own age, playing the game. So all of a sudden then he kind of remembered, oh, I have to go. So he went, but he was late, so he was way behind. So all the older warriors arrived in, and Cullen says, is there anyone else coming? And he says, no. They said, no, this is everyone now. And he goes, okay, I'll close the gate and let out the dog. They said, fine, yeah, off you go. So the dog was out patrolling up and down the gate, patrolling. And they were all inside eating and drinking and having a good time or whatever. And next thing they could hear the dog growling and howling. And all of a sudden your man says, I thought they said nobody else was coming. And your man realised, oh, that's Satanta. And they ran out and they couldn't do anything because the dog was so ferocious they couldn't control him. So they just had to wait and see what was going to happen. And Cuchulainn, at 8 or 9 years of age, had his hurling, his ball with him. He always used to bring it. So the dog came to attack him, and he threw up the slitter and popped it and went down the dog's throat and killed the dog, dropped him dead. And Cullen, of course, was fierce upset that his guard dog was dead. And so Cuchulainn made him a promise. He said, I'll tell you what, until there's a new dog trained, I'll train a new dog for you, and until that dog is ready, I'll be your guard dog. And then that's when he got the name Cuchulainn, which means the Hound of Cullen. So that's the first hurling story. And then from then on, I mean, it just carried on through all the warriors and everyone. It was used as basically kind of like faction fights. So one town would play against another town, and pretty much there were no rules. It was just, right, if we can beat you, we win. It was just a massive sense of pride. And as the years went on and on and on, and when the English came in, they tried to squash the game, and they tried to wipe it out completely. But never successful, because I mean, it was so much ingrained into what an Irish person is. I mean, there's so many stories about hurling, so many songs about hurling, just epic tales about hurling matches, and like most of them are basically mythical figures at this stage. So the stories about the fairies, they always played hurling. They always played music and played hurling. They never played anything else, never did anything else. It was always just playing music and played hurling. And that carried on through all those the folklore tales about great hurling matches, and how the best hurlers in Ireland were kidnapped basically by fairies and brought in to win a game. So we'll say like the fairies from Leinster would play the fairies from Munster in a hurling match, and all of a sudden they'd say, we're kind of stuck here. So they'd travel over to the next world and bring an Irish hurler back, like a human. They'd bring him back into their world, and they'd make him a promise. They'd say, we'll give you whatever you want as long as you play with us and we win this game. Like there's a great story, remember, of a man, a famous hurler from Antrim, who his sister was basically his best friend, and she died at a very young age, and he gave up hurling. And the fairies knew about him though, and he hadn't hurled in about 2 years because he was just too depressed and stuff, and he just didn't want to play hurling again, and people were always trying to coax him back, but he'd never come back. So basically he was walking home one night from the pub, and it was between dark and day, so it was dusk. This is when the fairies used to always come. So the fairies came across, and he met your man. He said, would you like to come with me? And he says, where are we going? He goes, oh, don't worry about that. He just goes, just come with me. And so the man says, okay. And he goes, we want you to play a hurling match. He says, oh, I don't play hurling anymore. He goes, no, you're the famous Jim McCann or something like that, I think his name was. And he says, okay, sure. No, I don't think it was. He goes, listen, I'll give you anything you want in the world. He goes, just come with me. He says, okay. So they brought him over to the next world anyway, and of course famous Jim won the game for them, scored 10 goals or something like this, and they won, and they had a big banquet for him and a big feast. And the fairy king says to him, right, I told you I'd give you a promise. He goes, what do you want in the world? He says, to be honest, I don't think you can give it to me. He says, what is it? He goes, I want my sister back. And he goes, your dead one? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, just kind of nodded like that, and in she walked in through the door, and he took her back, and then he went back playing hurling, and he was happy as Larry and things like that. Like, I mean, all folklore tales like this about how hurling is so powerful, and then of course you're coming into the early 20th century whenever the English were really trying to stomp it out, and the IRB of course used hurling clubs to recruit members, and they used the IRA and the IRB used hurls when they couldn't afford rifles. They used hurls to train with. So I mean, and then whenever famous people died, and their funerals basically would be outside the church, and up and down the street would be they'd make a tower like that with the hurls going across them, and they'd be paraded out underneath the hurls and things like that. And I mean, hurling is basically if you could get a sport or anything to personify or display what Irish people are, it's hurling. Just fast-paced, high-tempered, bravery, courage, just as Trailer could say. He'd describe it better than I could, I suppose. Just skin and hair flying, and high-scoring excitement, and high-tempered, like I said.
Yeah, there's some pretty famous pictures from when they were preparing for the 1916 Rising.
Exactly, yeah. They're all marching with their hurls over their shoulders, holding like a rifle, things like that, yeah. And then basically, I mean, they used to get famous people as well on a big event, you know, at a hurling match. They used to have real powerful figures, so they used to have like an archbishop or a cardinal, or Michael Collins even. There's a famous picture of Michael Collins where Brian's great-grandfather's actually in the front in the clash, where the two teams would line up in Croke Park, and your man would fling in the ball, and everyone would just be held for leather, and then they'd run off the field or whatever, but the two teams would play away then. And I mean, it was just a massive occasion. People used to cycle from Cork to Dublin just to look at a hurling match and things like that. I mean, sometimes they used to cram into Croke Park. They'd have over 100,000 people, and people sitting on the roof. And there's also the famous the Thunder and Lightning All-Ireland final when Cork, I can't remember now who played, Trail, I know now who played, but I can't remember who played, but it was Thunder and Lightning, and the game carried on. They just played away, and that was it. My granny used to always tell the stories, 20s or 30s. Yeah. So there's just, and then of course when you try to describe it to people here, and they say, "Oh, do you not get paid for it?" And it's just like, well, a lot of people don't want to be paid for it. That's the foundation of the GAA. It's an amateur organisation, and of course the GAA was founded and put together in Thurles in Tipperary, and that's when they really started to write down the rules of what it would be, and they added in Gaelic football then, but the Fairies didn't play Gaelic football, so we, you know, that's Cléthe Gaulda, as we say, a foreign game. They just put an Irish spin on a foreign game with that big ball. But hurling is the number one, the national one.
With the team that you guys have put together here, tell me a little bit about how that came about and getting the team together.
Basically, when I was coming over, I remember I was speaking to my father about it as well, and we were kind of thinking, he just goes, "Well, you're just going to have to start a club there." So, and I said, "Okay, I suppose I can." And I came over and I was excited, you know, I was kind of thinking, you know, it'd be pretty hard, it'd be pretty tough to sort out insurance and things like that. And so I came and I talked to Trailock, and I asked him, you know, what would be the best way of doing it, and he was very excited, because I mean, he's a massive hurling man as well. So he just said that straight away. He goes, "People in Montana, you have no idea, will take it to like ducks to water." He goes, "They'll love it." He goes, "You're coming to a country full of cowboys, bullfighters, American footballers and bull riders." And I said, "Okay." And straight away, like I said, I mean, Caleb got involved. I mean, he's a bullfighter, used to be a bull rider, and all this stuff. So we kind of got the club kind of underway, and he told me to go into the ASUM, and they'd cover the insurance and all things like that, go through the college. And I said, actually, yeah, that'd be way easier, because I don't have to deal with any paperwork then or anything. So my main thing is hurling, basically organising the hurling thing. So got the Facebook page up and running, and trying to get people recruited through my class, through Sheila's class, and through Trailock's class. But then after about 2 days of being here, when I was talking to him about it, he introduced me to Brian Barry from Dublin, who was over in the Law Exchange, and he actually plays for the same club as my brother, and I just never knew him. And it was just funny when we bumped into each other, and we were just talking about that, and just never knew each other, but we all know the same people nearly, and just took us to come to Missoula to meet. So Brian was living in the dorms, so he got on recruiting people from the dorms, basically just going around knocking on doors and just saying, "Sign up to this, sign up to that." And we got a lot of people out from that, and once we got the 22 signatures I think we needed, we got into the ASUM. They recognised us, gave us a bit of funding, and then it just snowballed from there. But the main problem was the gear, the hurls and the slitters. But my mother sent me over a batch of hurls, but 2 of them broke because of the altitude. I never took that under account at all. The altitude was so dry that the hurls dried up and just broke. So Terry McEnany then saw us poking around here on the oval, and he came over and he says, because Katrina had actually told me about Terry before I came over as well, and So I said, he kind of says, oh, hello, you know, what are you doing here? And I told him about hurling. He says, oh, yeah, I've seen this, blah, 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 blah. And he just kind of talking away. And then he just gave us a donation, a pretty big donation. And I just couldn't believe it. And we were able to fund to get hurls up, to get helmets, to get more slitters. And I mean, then from then on, I mean, once everybody in training had a hurl, it just took off. I mean, our skills were developed just so quickly. And we trained for about 6 weeks, and I could kind of feel that people were kind of, you know, why are we only practicing all the time and this and that. So I kind of got on to a fella that I kind of became kind of pretty good friends with there in Albany, a fella by the name of Austin Strickler, that's it, whose father-in-law is actually living here in Missoula as well. So he organised a tournament for us because his club was pretty new as well as the Albany Revenants Hurling Club in Oregon. So his club was pretty new, and what we did was he organised a tournament for us, and I was kind of pretty excited because I could tell how quick we had developed, because everyone wasn't just kind of playing just to play. Like that's the American attitude again, which is kind of humbling towards the sport, which is like, we don't just want to play, we want to be good, we want to be the best team around at this. And I was pretty excited. So we went down and we played 4 teams and we won 3, lost to the league champion, the Columbia Red Branch, by a goal. And so I mean, after that, I mean, I was delighted. I mean, I couldn't believe how good we've gotten so quick, and just the interest in it. And then what the main thing then was funding, to get jerseys, to get uniforms, because we went down, we were like licorice all sorts. Like, we were dressed like we were all wearing Grizz t-shirts, but they were all different Grizz t-shirts, and people wearing basketball shorts. Me and Brian were wearing hurling shorts, so we stood out like sore thumb. It looked like we had boxer shorts on compared to everybody else. Basically, that first day, me and Brian had to do a lot of the running. We have a fella called Kevin Moore, whose mother is from Galway. He's from Moscow, Idaho, and I mean, I couldn't believe how good he was when I saw him. We actually recruited him one night. We were on the way home from a long night out, and we bumped into him at the bus stop, and he just kind of told us that he had played hurling in Galway with his cousins, and so we were terribly excited, and he turned up, and we actually couldn't really remember him. But then once he kind of started talking to us, we said, oh, right, yeah, we know who you are now. And he was our full forward, and man, he ran the show in full forward that first day. I was just like, yes, straight away when he scored a goal, I said, we have one. So then it was just a matter of developing everybody else. We have a fella now, we have a guy from Austria who'll be one of our best players. He's from Salzburg in Austria. Michael Eibel is his name. And then we have a fella from North Dakota who finished in the top 5 his junior year in the national championships in wrestling and in his division. Then his senior year couldn't compete because he was injured. So he's just the ultimate, himself and Michael Eibel and Caleb, and then myself and Brian as well. Like, I mean, I don't know if I could class us as, they are just the ultimate competitors, the 3 of them, especially Michael, Caleb and Sean. They just want to be just all over everybody, just winning, and it's just pretty humbling when you come out and they just want to know what they can do to be better, what they can do on this side, what's striking off their right, striking off their left, you know, their hand passing abilities, their catching, their speed and all that. So then we got involved with Sean Kelly's and organised a fundraiser every week, and they helped us massively. They helped us to get the word out, number 1, and then with a bit of extra money, number 2. They just helped us massively, and we wear them proudly on the front of our jersey. And we have a few Irish slogans, like we actually look like a hurling team now, which is the best thing. We all have the proper helmets nearly, we all have the jersey, shorts and socks, and we have a few Irish slogans. So we have the Grizzpaw on the sleeve, and we have Grizzaboo written on the sleeve, and then on the back we have Ishinga, Montana, and that's our slogan under our crest as well, which means we are Montana. So I was in the gym one day and I looked out the window and I saw it in the back of the stadium, and I said, that'd be a good one. Yeah. I said, we'll yeah. Because even though we're all from different places, like we have people from California, Louisiana, Austria, Ireland, you know, like Cork, Dublin, Kerry even. We have a hurler from Kerry, and then North Dakota, from all over. And then we said, no, well, when we come together, we are Montana. And that's what we said. We just throw the Irish slogan on it, change it up. And I mean, so on our crest is, we have the M, the famous M. We have a grizzly bear, and then we have the UCC, which is the sister college in Cork. We have their emblem, which is a skull and crossbones, and then underneath that again, so we have this crest divided into 4 sections, which is basically when the Grizzlies came together with UCC under the banner of the M and became a hurling club. So we have 2 hurls crossed at the bottom as well, and in 2013 we have 2013 written on it too. And so we're pretty happy with the crest, and we're pretty proud of the team. And what we've done, I mean, even this season now as well, we've played in 2 tournaments, we've won the 2 tournaments, and now it's on to nationals, and hopefully we can win the win a third tournament and win a national title and bring it back to Missoula, because we don't have too many, and it would be a pretty good way to sign off the year with the hurling club like that.
Yeah.
And then the next goal then is to spread hurling around Montana, and we want to kind of strike while the iron is hot and get it out to Helena, get it out to Anaconda, get it out to Butte and Great Falls, and then try and develop a Montana state championship. Because I mean, to relive that, like I was discussing this with Caleb as well, and I mean, like high school football is the be all and end all. Like I mean, when you're playing for Butte and you're playing against maybe Missoula, a team from Missoula, or even if you're from somewhere like Whitehall and you're travelling into Butte and you know it's going to be a battle, it's just like it doesn't really matter how good you play as long as you win. But I mean, that finishes when you're 18, which is an awful shame. It's just a complete pity. I mean, that sense of competition never leaves somebody. So that's why hurling would be massive. I mean, if somebody got the chance, like I was talking to somebody from ABC Fox News about this, and I was kind of discussing about the amateur ethos in GA and how basically you're representing your town, so you don't really need to be paid. You don't, like, I mean, if somebody, like I explained to him, I goes, well, if you had the opportunity now, if I said to you, right, I'm going to dress you tomorrow and we're going to drive to Butte, and we have a team of players, we're going to play a football game against Butte, would you do it? He says, yeah. He goes, would you need to be paid? And he goes, no. He says, exactly. He goes, that's what hurling is. It's your town against the other town, your family against another family. Sometimes maybe you might be playing against your cousins, but they're not your cousins when you're playing against them. I mean, it's your town against that town. Yeah. So that's what I want to get. See, with the amount of Irish people as well, that's what we want to get the hurling culture, so they can celebrate being Irish and also celebrate the competition between two different towns. Or, like, I mean, if we can get 5 or 6 different teams, even in Montana alone, and have tournaments over weekends. I mean, imagine if we had a hurling tournament the weekend of St. Patrick's weekend over in Butte.
Oh my gosh!
Should it be mayhem?
Yeah,
Would it be good?
Brilliant.
It'd be mayhem, yeah. People would be rising from the dead to come back and watch it.
I love how you kind of incorporate that, kind of like Pierce Misha Aaron into your, I am.
Yeah, Ishing in Montana. Yeah, we are Montana.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's great. The embodiment of it. Yeah.
It's what we are. It kind of takes everything of what we are. Like, I mean, we are Montana, and then we're also celebrating an Irish thing. Yeah. So we just put it all together. And it was just one day in the gym, it just came to me. I said, I was just looking out the back window, not doing any exercise, just looking out the back window. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Is there anything else that you'd like to add as far as overall? I mean, either from your experiences here or from the hurling. I mean, you have a strong sense of legacy, both in your personal history, and I think what you want to leave behind. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically what I want to leave behind is, like I said, I'd love to stay on for an extra year and get this kind of stabilised, get the hurling club into the athletics department so that it would be recognised as an athletics team. I know that would be pretty hard, but even if we could kind of raise the kind of stature of the hurling club, get more funding, then use that money to spread it around Montana, get it into Butte, get it into Helena, get it into Anaconda, because I know they'd love it as well, especially in Butte. I know they'd love it, so I mean, I'd love to help in any way I could to get that over there and get any volunteers or anybody that would love to help get it over there, as well as spreading the language with Trailock and teach and spreading the culture through the Friends of Irish Studies and the Ancient Order of Hibernians. It's through the GA and through the hurling. It's up there. Like I said earlier, it's as important as music, it's as important as song, as the folklore, as the language. It's as important. So basically what I'd like to do, is be involved as much as I could with spreading it around, because I mean, like I said, Ishing in Montana now. We're a part of Montana now, and I get what Trailock meant, I get what Katrina meant, and Ciara Wadden as well, and Ciara Ryan as well, and they were saying, you're not going to want to leave. And to be honest, I don't really want to leave. I mean, the lifestyle here is perfect. It's just perfect. It's so laid back. Like I said, it's like the 33rd county of Ireland. All I ever did when I grew up was play hurling. So if I can bring, like when Missoula and people in Missoula were so good to me, if I can give something like that back to them, or people in Montana as well, the thing that I love probably the most, give that back to them. I mean, I couldn't think of a better way to repay what people have done for me here than to spread it around and get the game all over the state. I mean, that's the best way I think I could repay anybody, especially here.
Yeah. And so is this, when do you head back then?
Probably after Nationals, probably, so it'll be the last couple of days in May, or else first couple of days in June. And then what I'm hoping to do is just Caleb and his wife are actually coming over, and then the fella from Moscow, Idaho, Kevin Moore, he's actually coming over as well. And then a guy who was here last semester from Germany is coming over to Ireland as well. So I'll have to be a tour guide for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and then spend a couple of weeks at home just talking, maybe do a bit of teaching again, and talking with my family, talking with my friends, and visit my grandfather and in Derry and see how he's getting on. And then after that, hopefully come back, see if I can get back, get my visa extended, and do a bit more teaching. But the main goal will be the hurling. Yeah, I can teach when I want, but because I can teach at home. But I mean, this is pretty special. Like trying to get hurling going here. Even the teaching here is pretty special. I mean, teaching people that are so interested in speaking Irish. I mean, their love of talking Irish. I mean, it's just second to none. Like apart from people from the Gaeltacht at home, obviously, like families like mine, things like that. Because we're not from a Gaeltacht area, so we'd be pretty much an exception in where we're from, which is it's kind of cool as well. So, you know, straight away we were kind of pointed out as being different, so we do different things all over the place now.
Yeah,
no
badge of honour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no point being the same. Yeah. Same as bringing the hurling club here. I mean, there's no other in the northwest. There's no other university hurling team. California is the only. There's at least 2 universities in California that play hurling, and then there's us. Yeah, there's Cal and Berkeley and Stanford. So there's 3. Yeah, sorry. So there's 3, and then there's ourselves. We're the only hurling teams west of the west, basically west. Yeah. So I mean, northwest. We have to go represent the northwest now and bring a national title back to the University of Montana. Something we can hold over the other universities in Montana.
Yeah.
Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add or put in here? Or?
Not much. I'm just pretty proud to be part of the Irish history in Montana. I mean, it's such a massive history going back 100 and some years, and I mean, then to be part of it, starting up establishing a first hurling club in Montana. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than that, really. So I'm just delighted and honoured, really, to be here, and I was delighted when Trailer picked me, and when I came out here straight away, I just fell in love with the place. And now that the time is winding down, I'm not too happy. I'm having nightmares about being at home.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you here, Naoise.
Thanks.
Good to meet him, good.
Fall the road. Good.
I really want to thank Naoise for the time he took to sit down with us. He did come back to Montana, and he has many times, working with the hurling team, visiting with friends he has made, and even grabbing the occasional wop chop. In the years following this interview, Naoise even did some interviews with other players that you'll get to hear right here on future episodes of the podcast. We will also be bringing you more from Naoise, including a recent interview where Donica caught up with him in Dublin and talked with him now that the University of Montana Grizzlies have won 4 NCGAA hurling championships.
Because even though we're all from different places, like we have people from California, Louisiana, Austria, Ireland, you know, like Cork, Dublin, Kerry even. We have a hurler from Kerry, and then North Dakota, from all over. And then we said, no, well, when we come together, we are Montana.
We also really want to thank the Blaggards for allowing us to use their music. You can find them online at theblaggards.com. We also want to thank everyone who came out and supported us at the hurling games over the past St. Patrick's Day weekend, and everybody who has supported us through our social media, and those of you who have become patrons. Without this direct support from the community, none of this would be possible.